Hello YouTube, Genius in Exile here. It's not quite springtime, it's actually still officially winter, but in the south it's springtime. So I've got some lovely asparagus, and I think this is a 15-quart bowl. Look at that. How beautiful is that? Now before you all get jealous, I did not harvest this out of my garden, although I wish my asparagus plant would put out that much, but I happened to catch a really good deal on asparagus at the store. And what I've done is I've gotten some big ones and some smaller ones. The smaller ones have been separated. They're going to be used for something else, but the big ones are going to be canned. That's right. Asparagus for any time. So what I'm going to do is with any asparagus, I actually snap off the woody part, and it'll snap off wherever it's kind of woody. That'll be discarded. Now, to fit into the quart jar, you have to cut them to a certain length so they'll fit right in. So what I've done is I've just cut one, it'll go right up to the bottom here. Yes, I know this would probably fit better in a wide mouth jar, but I don't have any right now, can't find any right now. And the ones I do have are already filled with stuff, so you do what you can. So once I've snapped off the end, hold them together, cut them off. Now the tender part that is, was not snapped off will not go to waste. It's actually going to go into this bowl, and I'll make cream of asparagus soup with it. So let me show you again. This one's not been snapped. You just hold it by the bottom and let it tell you where it needs to be snapped. So let me get these ready and get them all cut up, and I'll be back to you in just a minute. Okay, so it's taken me about an hour, because what I do is I snap them off, of course, and then I chopped them. I cut them to fit the jar. So here's all the big ones. Isn't that beautiful? The purple and the green. Oh, just looks like springtime to me. And then here's what I cut off that fit the jars after I snapped off the ends. So I'm going to use this to make cream of asparagus soup tonight. And these little ones I've decided to make into pickled asparagus. So I cut them to fit these wide mouth pint jars I've got in the dishwasher. And I wanted to show you how they look in the jar before they're processed. Isn't that beautiful? None of them are moving. They are packed tight in there. See? Not moving. Isn't that pretty? What I did is I just set the jar on the side. I just started putting them in there one after another, and if there's a little bit of a space, I moved the head aside and poked another one right past it. So what I'm going to do is a raw pack, and then I'm going to put hot water over them with maybe a little bit of salt and just a teeny tiny touch of this Fruit Fresh. And then I'm going to process them at 10 pounds of pressure for 25 minutes. And then I'm going to make pickled asparagus. So I know that I want to use garlic in them. And I've got some of the best steak rub in the universe. I got this from Kaufman's, and it is just absolutely wonderful. So I'm going to put a little bit of that in there. I'm going to get the vinegar ready and some other spices in there. I haven't quite decided exactly what I'm going to use, but I need to ask hubby, because I'm actually making the pickled asparagus for him, if he wants them to be the sweet pickles or the really kind of dilly, spicy ones. So anyway, these are ready for the jars. Cream of asparagus soup, pickled asparagus, compost pile, and already in the jars. So let me get my jars filled. Let me get my hot water ready to go and my pickling salt, and I'll get back to you. Okay, I just have to show you one more time. Doesn't that look beautiful? Seriously. My favorite color is green. It's actually more of a sage green. That's my favorite, but any kind of green just is wonderful to me. It just represents life, and that's how wonderful everything is. And after, the dead of winter and everything's so cold, something fresh and green and wonderful like this with all its beautiful colors and its tender texture just makes me giggle inside. Hey. Alrighty. Enough food porn. Onto the jars. Okay, so I've got my pickled asparagus ready to go, and these are the little ones that I set aside, and I cut them to fit the pint jar. So I'm going to put my funnel on there, and I love this funnel. You can actually use it with a regular or wide mouth, and it gives you the head space measurements. And sorry, the kids are watching Coraline. There. Got my pickling liquid in here. What this is white vinegar and dill and some of that steak seasoning, and I put a couple of slices of garlic in each jar. I'm just going to fill this up and I'll be back. Okie dokie. So I managed to fill 7 quart jars full of packed asparagus. I've got plenty of ends, and I've got some tips that wouldn't go into a jar. I mean, it wasn't enough to start a new jar, but I couldn't get them into these because they're packed pretty tightly. The unfortunate part is that I have a lot of stems and pieces, and I don't know. I mean, I like to can them as tips, but that is a lot of asparagus. I mean, easily about 4 pounds, 5 pounds. So this I'm going to make the soup out of, so I don't waste it. But I'll get the hot water put into these jars. I've already added my salt. There you go, so you can see it better. And then I'll process these at 10 pounds of pressure for 25 minutes. So I'll be back to show you what they look like when they're done. I just wanted to show y'all how absolutely beautiful these look. I've got the water packed in them. You can see a little garlic in there. I've got the salt in there. I haven't processed them yet, but they just look so pretty. I had to show you. Okay, so I've got them in the canner. Again, beautiful. Really, really pretty. So what I'll do is I'll put the top on after I add a little bit more water to this, and I'll let the canner vent for 10 minutes. Then I'll add on the 10-pound weight, and then once it gets up to 10 pounds of pressure, I'll start the timer at 25 minutes. Then once they're done, I'll turn off the heat. Do not remove the canner weight. I've actually found out that's a common practice. Don't do it. Just turn off the heat and let the pressure go down naturally by itself, and then wait another, I don't know, 10-15 minutes or so, and then take off the weight and the top, so you won't have a blowout on your jars. So, alright, 25 minutes. Okay, so I've got all the asparagus stems into a pot, and I've covered them in water. This is not a small pot, and this is really full. They've actually only just now started to push down. They were all the way up to the top when I put this in, but they're starting to get a little bit tender. I've got them on medium heat, and I'll probably crank it up just to get them cooking, and I'll cook them until they're tender. And I'm going to put them through the blender and then strain them, and then add the tips that I've chopped up. And I'll add some chicken broth and some garlic, maybe some green onions, and make cream of asparagus soup. Now, I'll be canning this up, so I won't actually add the cream part of it. I have some shelf-stable cream that I've ordered online, Gosner's. And when I'm ready to serve, I'll actually add that in. So this will be a little bit saltier than I would normally serve, but it's going to compensate for the cream. So I'll be back when this is ready too. Meanwhile, canner is heating up, and I'm waiting for it to start to spout the steam, and I'll vent that for 10 minutes. So far it's canned asparagus, cream of asparagus soup, and pickled asparagus. Yippee! Okay, so the asparagus is nice and tender. Got it in the blender. I'm going to add just enough water to loosen it up. Then I'm going to blend it, and I've got a bowl there to put it into, so I'm going to need to do a few batches. So, let me get this in there. I try not to fill it up too much. I don't know how many of you have blended something hot, but it does tend to kind of blow over all of Vesuvius when you turn it on. Isn't that a beautiful color? And I try not to cook it too much initially because it's going to be processed, and you just don't want to kill the taste entirely. So, let me get this blended up, and see if I can do a little bit. Oh no, it's going to be too loud. Yeah, it's going to be too loud. So I'll be back when it's blended. Okay, that actually wasn't too bad. Now you'll notice there's some stringy parts. That's okay, that's the outside of the asparagus. I'm going to strain that out. And meanwhile, the canner is still heating up. Yeah, that's going to take a little bit. So, what I'm looking for is right here for the vent to start spewing some steam. When there's a steady stream, I'll start the timer at 10 minutes. We've got to let it vent to get that extra air out. Then I'll put the weight on, and in case you haven't seen one of these before, this is a weight. It's got 5, 10, and 15. I'm right at sea level, so I'll be using 10. So, whoops. Okay, yeah. Remember that whole blowover thing? I better do this two-handed. Be right back. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Let me grab a spoon so I can show you a little better. See? Nice, not real smooth, but that's okay. I'll be straining out a lot of these bits, and I'll be adding some chopped asparagus tips, so I have just the tender parts, but I really just wanted the taste of the asparagus. So I'm going to use a strainer and strain it out. So let me get another batch going and I'll be right back. Just wanted to show you what it looked like. You know, as I was doing this part, I was thinking and thought I would share it. I really should have done this part first and then use this water to add to the tips, because there's a lot of nutrition in here. So I didn't even think about it, and I thought I would at least share the lesson learned, so I'll remember it for next time. But I wanted to pass it on to you in case you were about to can some asparagus, or maybe later on in the year. So do this part first if you're going to make soup, and use this water to can up your tips, because this has just so much in it. So I want to pass it on. Still blending more asparagus. Oh, and back here I'm trying to make a batch of blackberry pineapple vinegar. The pineapple wine that I made turned out really, really strong, and so did the blackberry wine. So I decided I would throw it in there and make some vinegar, inspired by Pet Prepper. Yes, you girl. She was asking me about vinegar one day, and I told her I would try to make some and show her. So there it is, looking good. It's not forming any scum on top yet, but I'm pretty hopeful. Back to the asparagus. Okay, so I've partially strained this out. It was so thick, only water was coming through, so I've abandoned the whole straining thing, but it's actually pretty smooth. I mean, it looks lumpy, but it's not stringy. How's that? So I've got some garlic, some of the tips I saved, and some green onion. I'm going to add that in. And there we go. I'm telling you, filming and doing everything one-handed builds dexterity and character. And I added some powdered chicken broth. So I'm going to stir that in. This is still screaming hot. Now I've made it a little bit saltier than I would normally just serve. But right before I serve it, I'm going to add some of the cream I have. And this smells absolutely incredible. And I know it looks like such a funky green color. Yay! She's eating lake scum. Yay! No, but it's actually really, really good. So I'm going to run this through the blender one more time and get it into the jars. I'll probably end up heating it up just a little bit more before I jar it, but I'll be right back. Alright, so I thought I'd show you how to do this. First of all, these jars are hot right out of the dishwasher. I kept them on the heating cycle to keep them nice and hot. But one thing I always want to remind you of, every single time you can, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, always check your jar rims, because I just found a small chip in one of mine. And so I always try to remember it each and every time, but sometimes when you get too comfortable into your routines, you start to forget the little simple things. So just going to get these into the jar. Check your rims. Use a good funnel, nice stable funnel. I love this one. Watch your head space. Always prepare a couple more jars than you think you'll need, along with the lids and the rings, because you never know. One may break, heaven forbid, before you get to it. So I've had that happen to me before, where I had some kids in the kitchen and one of them knocked one right off the counter. You never know if maybe you've made more than you thought. But the one thing I'm always amazed at is how much food you can fit into a jar. Seriously, I had all that asparagus and only filled 7 quart jars, and that was just the tips, okay? And then I had that other pile of asparagus that I was going to make pickles out of that only filled 2 wide-mouth pint jars. I seriously thought I needed 4 or 5. Just 2. Just 2, and that was absolutely amazing to me. So we'll see how much this makes. And I'm just talking to you and giving you some reminders as I'm doing this. There we go. Probably thinking, just trying to watch you make asparagus soup. Stop gabbing. There we go. That's going to be really nice. And I love asparagus. It's such a nice springtime soup or food. And I love to eat it lightly steamed and grilled. Maybe some nice thin ham wrapped around it. Or even just as it is. Because I even like it raw. Really green tasting raw though. It's very, very strong. But yeah, this is not going to fit into a quart. I don't think I'll need a pint for that. But I've got those ready too. And sometimes I think, you know, for such a nice springtime food, it's almost sad to can it up. But we'll have lots of asparagus for later, maybe at a time that it's not available. So I'm trying to grow some so I can have some fresh, and I'm putting some away for when it's not available. Alright, be right back. Alright, so we're up to 10 pounds of pressure. Put the weight on. Got the timer going for 25 minutes. Mine happens to rest right on 6. Ooh, dirty stove. There we go. 25 minutes, and all that soup fit into 3 quarts and 1 pint. It still absolutely amazes me just how much food you can fit into these jars. Absolutely amazing. That is not a small pot. It's really not. As a matter of fact, there it is, waiting to be washed. Amazing. Alright, so I've wiped off my rims. I'm going to get the lids and the rings on, and they're next to go into the canner. Hey, I let them process for 25 minutes, let the pressure go down, and waited for the canner to kind of just cool off for about another 15 minutes after it achieves 0 pressure. And this is what they look like. Very nice. Looks like there's still plenty of life left in them too. A lot cheaper than they would have been canned. A lot safer because I know I did it. Several years ago, there was a green bean scare. And we were eating my fresh, you know, canned homemade green beans, so I'll trust this any day before, you know, anything store-bought. I just want to show you that's what they look like. I've got the soup in the canner now. That's starting its cycle. I wanted to show you that. So I'll be back to show you what the soup looks like when it's done. And here's my asparagus soup. It did separate a little bit, which I figured it probably would, but when I dump it into a pot, I'm just going to stir it up and add some heavy cream and serve. Ta-da! Nice. And then my pickled asparagus is actually just going to be refrigerated, and that's already in the pickling brine. I've got the spices in there. And those are really, really pretty, so I'm just going to leave those as they are. They're just going to be fridge picks. You know, refrigerator pickles. There's my garlic. They'll be really nice. But I suppose if you were to, you know, want to can these up, keep the vinegar hot, keep the jars hot, and then process them in a boiling water bath. I think for something like this, probably be about 15 minutes or so. So there you go. A whole freaking bunch of asparagus put away. And I know I shouldn't have done it, but I shook that up a little bit. Don't do that. She's a bad girl. There we go. A whole huge bunch of asparagus. Not a whole lot wasted. Oh, and that water I was lamenting about, I actually watered it down and used it to water my plants. So they'll be happy with it. So I don't think I'll ever do another 50-pound venture like I did with the carrots. But 20 pounds of asparagus, not bad. And you can actually see the color. It's not exactly the same anymore, but I mean, this is sitting in vinegar and that's been canned for 25 minutes, plus the venting time, plus the cooling time. But you know, it's still better than the canned asparagus you get in the store. So, pickles, soup, asparagus itself, ta-da! There you go. Can up your own vegetables. You know what's in it? Because what you put into those jars is what you get out of those jars. Be careful, be clean, be sanitary, follow all the rules, and you will have no problem at all. Anybody out there who's afraid of home canning, be brave and do it. because you know what's in your food. Be responsible for what goes into your body. Here we go.